Well, thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. We are once again honored to be joining you, having you join us in this conversation. Probably one of the most exciting conversations in the world, once people understand what it's about. It's one that it's been so exciting for me that I've been involved in it for half a century now. And I feel very blessed that it has become my livelihood and the way that we interact with and touch the world. So the core of the process is something that has been pretty much hidden, destroyed, bastardized, covered up, turned backwards, inside out, upside down. And we're looking to get it back to its original posture of the healing process that is so profound when we realize who we are as human beings, when we realize what we are, and function out of the truth of our original nature. And much as the world and those who supposedly follow this man who 2,000 years ago gave the tools and the understanding, will tell you that the core tool that the man Yeshua taught was about how if you're in pain, if you're in trauma, of course it's all somebody else's fault, and all you have to do is let them off the hook. You just forgive them. We're here to tell you, never forgive anybody for anything. And people say, oh, that's right, I need to forgive myself. No, we're going to suggest you never even attempt to forgive yourself for anything, because forgiveness has nothing whatsoever to do with the Greek definition we've been given in this culture for that word. We've been taught you did something terrible and I'm in pain because of you. And notice, is there anybody in your life that if they change, your life would be happy? If your answer to that question is even the slightest little bit of leaning toward that's what you believe, then your mind is a liar, and your mind has, and the Greek philosophical culture put into the mouth of the words, whose words were put into the mouth of the man Yeshua 2,000 years ago, have turned everything backward. We are going to suggest you deeply, 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 and profoundly learn to forgive. And oftentimes, because of the misdefinition of the word, people say, well, wait a minute, Michael, you just told us never to forgive anyone. That's right, I told you never to forgive anyone, but I didn't tell you never to forgive. Once you understand who you are and the root of your pain, then forgiveness becomes the key to being alive. I had someone who asked a question. We just sent out a newsletter, and in it, we're talking about the new membership program that we're doing with a monthly mind shifters and still point breathing process, and a follow-up session Q&A. And one of the lines in the flyer speaks about the idea that this mind shifters tool and the still point breathing process are keys to having a near life experience. And someone wrote, and I said, well, what is that? Well, if you are dead to the fact that your physiology is designed to be fueled by love, and when love is the fuel that it uses instead of the hostilities and fears of the culture, then whatever's going on in your life, there's going to be the presence of love within you, because that's who you are. If you've lost that awareness, then Go back and listen to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and one of his disciples, he said, let the blind lead the blind, let the dead bury the dead. If you are dead to the fact that your created essence is conscious, active, present love, then you've been fooled and you've formed a self based in hostility or fear that is a lie, that isn't true. You might remember the man said, in order for you, being, to live, you, non-being, have to die. The self formed out of hostility and fear has to go. So once people lose awareness, and it usually happens very early, like within the first couple of years of life, of themselves as created love, they formulate a false self, a self that has no true existence whatsoever, and they fall into or get lost in, they speak about the fall, they fall into identification with this self based in hostility and fear. Once you've done that, you're dead. Now, the world talks about what they call a near-death experience, but actually it's not a near-death experience at all. If you listen to the accounts of people who have gone through clinical death, they come back talking about love. That's a near-life experience. When carbon-based memory, when the body's mind, clinical death occurs, the self that is false is gone. It's out of the picture. And now with that clinical death occurring, the near-life experience, not a near-death experience, one has the opportunity to wake up to being, to wake up to who they are as love. And then if they're resuscitated, and I don't suggest going out and pursuing this near-death, near-life experience, but if the so-called body is resuscitated, then one comes back to awareness of themselves as love, and they've had a near-life experience, and if they can hold on to it, if they've got the tools to hold on to it, then love will be the constant companion in their lives for the rest of eternity. And nothing in their environment, nothing in their family system, nothing in their culture, nothing in their world needs to change for that to happen. That's a near-life experience. Sadly, over time, and I say this from experience because been there, done that, that old hostility and fear-based self rears its ugly head time after time after time and puts us back to sleep, back into that death of living as a non-being so-called self, lowercase self, that thinks that hostility and fear is the fuel that keeps a human life going. Oh yes, the desire for love, but the hostility and fear becomes the key for most people. And they lose contact with that near-life experience. When you utilize the still point breathing process, everything held in the memory bank of the body's mind collapses in that still point. And one has the opportunity, once again, to have a near-life experience, to touch who they are as human beings, and then take the tools into the next level of work required to stay awake as who we are. And there are many groups out there who are co-opting this awake idea as though it's some kind of a political thing and you're going to wake up to how somebody's going to destroy somebody else. And, the whole conversation's right back to hostility and fear again. Where is the love? So, if you're going to apply forgiveness, you're going to acquire a tool with which you collapse the output of your perceptual mind when your perceptual mind is outputting something based in hostility or fear. When you collapse that, you get to taste who you are once again. You get to weaken the old dynamics of hostility and fear and strengthen the state of being human. And the human, by definition, is created love. So forgiveness in Aramaic, from the teachings in the first century, 2,000 years ago, is a tool with which you collapse. It's not the tool with which you let everybody else off the hook. That's pardoning. Pardon somebody if you will. But if you call it forgiveness, then you won't do the real forgiveness work. So when I say never forgive yourself, never forgive anyone, I'm saying enough of this. I'm going to let myself off the hook. I'll let you off the hook for the terrible thing you did. Now, if I choose to do that, I'll pardon you, I'll pardon myself, and okay, that's great. But having pardoned, now if I'm going to truly awaken, I'm going to forgive. I'm going to go inside myself and remove the content that never belonged within my human form. And as I, over time, remove the content more based in hostility and fear, more and more I get to experience myself as my created essence. And so we're here to support that experience being available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. We are reading from the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? A couple of paragraphs each show. And so I'm going to go to page 110. We're on page 110. The body has a mind of its own. And we've been explaining, and this brief explanation that I just gave may leave some confusion in your mind, and Richard's at the point of confusion. He says, so I've shared some of what's going on, how we can come to the experience of ourselves as love with nothing changing in the world. And when things are stirred that are based in hostility or fear, the tendency can be to lose the connection to love and have it replaced with that hostility or fear. And we've been having that conversation with this character, Richard, and he's in overwhelm, and he doesn't understand the confusion that's going on in his mind. So I offer him thought, Richard, the nature of thoughts is energy, and they follow the laws of energy. I suspect they have both wave and particle properties, much like light. If I shine a red, a blue, a green light on a plain white surface, what will you get? You know something? I just realized that we're actually a little further down the page than that. So we've already covered those ideas. My apology. And talking with Richard as well about a thing called the file folder effect. So offer him the thought, well, the file folder effect is taking its toll on me at this moment, Richard offers. If a conversation such as the one we're having stirs up this much feeling, what chance does the average person have in their lives? So Richard and I are sitting safely on a deck at our center in the Ozarks, and he came in a fairly peaceful place. He stirred a lot of old painful memories, and we've been pointing out, notice that the only reason we've stirred old painful memories is because they're there, and if they're there, then they are fit subjects for forgiveness. You want to remove them. And so he's kind of ruminating on this. Well, geez, if I'm just sitting here, what chance does a person have out there in the quote-unquote unreal world? And so I offer him the thought, most people don't allow the space in their lives to look as deeply into themselves as you are now. They keep themselves drugged and on the run with no time to feel their feelings. If hidden feelings surface during dinner, another scotch or a serving of a sugar-laden dessert will take care of keeping those feelings suppressed. If the drug from the night before slow their awakening processes in the morning, people often jump to start themselves with caffeine So, drug yourself at night to go to sleep, and, you go to the pharmacy, you get pills to help you go to sleep, and then, of course, what do you need? You need another drug, the most common drug in the culture probably, or one of the most common next to busyness, caffeine. So if the drugs the night before slow their waking process in the morning, people often jumpstart themselves with caffeine, nicotine, and or sugar. This behavior is so prevalent it is not recognized for what it is, addiction and suppression. Busyness is another of the drugs used in our culture to avoid looking at our issues. Layers of confusion will surface as you do your work, and that is absolutely desirable. As conflicting realities surface and you forgive them, new levels of clarity. Now remember, the word forgive means to remove. So if some form of hostility or fear is aroused, you apply forgiveness. So, you're in a continuous process of forgiveness. And that you apply forgiveness to those old painful realities to remove them. And as you do, new levels of clarity and empowerment will come. This will happen if you do not use your energy or drugs to avoid, numb out, and stuff what you don't want to see. Healing will occur instead if you deal with and release the painful realities and let go of the burdens that most people suppress and keep hidden. Richard comes back with, you resonate hope in me, Michael. It looks like a giant task, but the other way of living hasn't worked, so why not do it differently? Richard's energy seemed to lighten a little, and I asked him why. Well, even though I've dug myself into a pit, I think I'm starting to see a way out. I'm grasping the cause and the solution to the insanity that I've experienced all my life. I'm seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and this time it's not an oncoming train. I think I can actually get a handle on what has happened, he said enthusiastically. I might even be able to create a decent, loving relationship with this understanding and these tools. And we'll finish today's reading with a key thought. We must reach the point where we can change our present in order to change our future. And what is the present in most people's minds? The present, too often, is some form of hostility or fear that people don't want to deal with. I apply forgiveness to my present moment reality to remove that hostility or fear. So I'm forgiving continuously, but I'm not forgiving them or myself. Forgiveness is applied to the state of mind in me that holds some form of hostility or fear. And that's our objective, is to create support for and an ongoing conversation so that this understanding becomes just commonplace, that everybody realizes, oh, I have a reality output from my mind. It's that old reality, the why is this happening to me reality of hostility or fear. And when that comes up, I apply forgiveness to it, and I scratch away. I remove another piece of that old family dynamic. And when you realize that, in the ancient Aramaic, they talked about the idea of sin as, actually it's an archery term, and it means off the mark. And so when I engage in energy that doesn't belong in my structure, I integrate into my field that energy that's off the mark, sin. And then you recall they talked about how the sins of the fathers passed to 3 and 4 generations, and that isn't anything to do with, that's just information. Here's how the thing works. Every energy you engage in is stored holographically in every cell in your structure, including the sperm and the egg. And were you to conceive a child tomorrow, that child would have in its structure every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever felt, every reality you've ever engaged in. So we end up with these generational patterns stored in carbon-based memory that tend to make up the root of the self that is a lie. The self that Yeshua 2,000 years ago said had to die in order for the true being that we are to enter physiology and to live consciously as active present love. So when you realize that, well, if you just go 4 generations back, that's 31 lives. Did anybody ever tell you that stored in your physiology is every thought, every feeling, every reality, every challenge, every unresolved issue, and the beauties and powers and strengths of the previous 31 people in your bloodline? Did anybody tell you that? And further, when you realize 4 generations back, where did the 4th generation back get their issues, their patterns, their feelings, their realities, but from the previous 4? Who got them from the previous 4? Who got them from? Who got them from? Who got them from? And here we are, a chain receiving these insane energetic patterns and thinking, oh, well, that's just life, and they're doing it to me, so yeah, I'll forgive them for it. Again, never forgive anybody for anything. Never forgive yourself for anything. Apply forgiveness continuously to remove hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama, and trauma from your physiology, and you're on track. And we're here to engage so that we ourselves stay on track. One of the things I discovered a long time ago was the best way to become a full-time student of this work was to become a full-time teacher of it. And so I'm always teaching myself and holding the space that if this conversation's for you, you're here to engage it, and we're here to support literally the alleviation of all pain and all trauma from all generations in all of life in the world. Imagine the morning when 7.5 billion people wake up, each one fully cognizant of the fact that they are the created essence of love, and they choose to bring that created essence of love forward into the world every day, every minute of every day. And when something less than love comes up, they apply forgiveness instantly to remove that which is coming up and free themselves from it. When you look at the Greek definition of forgiveness, I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. I mean, it's absolute. If you want to trap people in an insane world, it's absolutely brilliant to tell them that everybody else is at fault, and you should just keep forgiving them, just keep letting them off the hook. And as you keep letting them off the hook, you're accumulating more and more and more of the drama and trauma, or you're resonating more and more of the drama and trauma from your generations, and it takes over more and more of the mind. So we want to shift forgiveness to removal of that content. And we are honored that you're here to be part of the conversation. Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, on both of those. However, I got an email from a lady, and she's like, I'm going to guess she's in her late 20s, early 30s. So she's older than just a child. However, she wants to do this work, and she wants to teach it. And I think she also does Reiki, but doing her purpose, quote unquote, and the spiritual work is not paying her bills. So she's moved back in with her parents so they can support her financially. Now here she is, like I said, she's either in her late 20s or early 30s. So she's old enough, to be living on her own, not depending on her parents. And she doesn't understand why this isn't working for her and why her parents are frustrated with her, and wants to know how we do it, that's what she wants to do. And I told her she needs to actually go get a job doing something to support herself financially while she's building her clientele or whatever to do the spiritual work. So can you add to that? And I'm going to tell her to listen to today's show.
Cool. Yeah, that's a really important point, because many people who first hear about this work, who live in the hostility and fear-based world, poverty-stricken, working hard at a job just to make ends meet, keep the bills paid and all, go, oh, well, I'm going to be a spiritual teacher, then everything will be okay. Well, if your purpose is to be a spiritual teacher, we are here to support you in fully, completely manifesting that state of mind and of being. And guess what you're going to have to face on the road there? Now, I'll speak of my own personal experience. When I first started doing this work, I came out of the business world. I actually had 3 businesses. I had about 60 employees, and I had a Mark III on one side of my driveway. I had an Eldorado on the other side of my driveway. I had a penthouse apartment in one city and homes in 2 other cities. And I decided to move into spiritual teachings. I literally woke up one morning. It's like, Michael, this is not why you're here. And for almost 7 years, I just about starved. I didn't know how I was going to put food on the table for my kids the next day, oftentimes. And I realized that I had to do the work in me of forgiving, one, the belief that had been drummed into me as a kid that if you're going to do spiritual work, you live in poverty. Listen to Yeshua, he says, the servant is worthy of their hire. You deserve to be well remunerated for doing spiritual work. And if you hold a belief that you can't be, then that's going to be the first thing you want to start working on forgiving. I'll offer that it took me, from the time I decided to start to do this work full time, to where it actually supported me, it took me about 7 years. And I think I shared last week, I can remember exactly the minute where it went from poverty is the rule if you're doing spiritual work to where abundance is the rule. Exactly where I was on the face of the earth. I was actually on I-95 at Hillsborough Boulevard in South Florida, heading to a workshop with $102 or $103 in my pocket, and knowing that I was going to finish, I was going to do one class that evening. The next morning, load my car, put the kids in the car, we're in South Florida, and head back to North Georgia. Actually, December 24th, the pipes froze in a house that I'd rented in North Georgia. And that's where I was working on the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And ended up going to South Florida while the pipes were being repaired. And still, that was getting down to that 7th year of, it's poverty to do this work. So I'm driving down I-95. I had set up a 6-week series of workshops, Wednesday evenings at Unity in Fort Lauderdale. I was staying up with friends in North Palm Beach. So I'm driving down I-95 and contemplating, how am I going to do this? I've got $102 in my pocket. My share of the donations from the workshop tonight will maybe be $100. And I'm going to drive back to North Georgia. I don't even have the money for the gas, let alone to put food in the fridge for the kids. And I had the guidance as I hit Hillsborough Boulevard. I'm driving down 95, just contemplating this whole situation. And I'm guided to get off the interstate, go and find a bank, and take $100 of the $102 or $103 in my pocket and turn it into a $100 bill, get a $100 bill for it, and give it away at the workshop tonight. So when I had that guidance, it was like, you want me to do what? Got off the interstate, got a $100 bill, created an exercise. The 6-week series I had named, given titles to them back, a couple months earlier. And the last in the series was, still waiting for your ship to come in? Which one did you send out? And in the workshop, I talked about, the scriptural principle of giving and, that you return 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Everybody's excited. Oh, yeah, great. Okay, so what do you want back? Oh, I want $1 million. Okay, so take $10,000 out of your pocket and give it away tonight. Well, let's not get that extreme, Michael. Well, if you want that million, that's how the energy works. So what are you willing to give away? I knew I had a $100 bill, folded it up, Had people either take cash or write a check to cash, fold it up and put it in their hands, stand up, walk around the room. I don't know, we had maybe 100 people that night. Had them walk around the room, and on signal, whatever was in one hand, they'd hand to the person in front of them, and with their other hand, they'd receive what that person had. Wouldn't look at it. The next exchange, we did that exchange, I don't know, 6, 7 times. And I ended up with a $20 bill. I was like, well, I guess that really worked. Went back, drove back up to North Palm Beach. In the morning, packed the car. The fellow who we were staying with is like, well, Michael, you're just getting things started here. You can't leave. You've got to stay here. This is just really starting to rock. It's like, that's true, it was. But I had commitments in Atlanta. And so it's like, no, we got to go. Packed the kids in the car, turned the key, and for the first time in about 60,000 miles, I turned the key, absolutely nothing happened. Not even a click from the battery. I took that as a signal that I was supposed to unpack the car, which I did. And the next week, I had a full-time practice doing this work in South Florida. Phone started to ring, and I made about 300% more that week than I had made in any week in the previous 7 years of doing this work. And it's never dropped below that since. Now, I don't know what work you're going to need to do in order to make that shift. I don't know if you have the belief that poverty is your lot in life, and that's just a general principle. But you're going to have to confront, face, and forgive everything in you that creates poverty, which is basically what happened for me that night. It was me keying into, okay, I'm going to have the trust that I can give this $100 bill away, even though I don't really have it. And I took the instruction to give it in trust. It wasn't the fact that I gave away $100. It could have been $1. It could have been 10 million. It doesn't matter. But that's where my energetic shift came. And, I could almost, there's almost a sense of the energy. It was like I made a turn energetically in how I perceived finances in relationship to doing spiritual work. I can almost feel like that energy-wise, I made a shift in another direction. And everything in the universe around me reorganized. And that's when I became remunerated for doing the spiritual work that we do. And that was, let's see, my son was perhaps 3, and he just turned 42, so that was about 39 years ago. Still waiting for your ship to come in? Which one are you sending out? And it's not, I have to change my belief about something. It's I have to go in and forgive the generational pattern, in this case, the generational pattern of poverty, of deserving, of worthiness. So, when they ask Yeshua, how many of these worksheets, how many times do we need to forgive as to our brother? Is 7 times enough? Now, when you take that phrase, as to, those 2 words are missing in the Greek translations, but everywhere that in the Greek translations, Yeshua supposedly says, forgive your brother. In Aramaic, they left those 2 words, forgive as to your brother. In other words, it's not my brother that I'm forgiving, but as to. So I interact with my brother, and my brother says, oh, Michael, this work is so awesome, I could never pay you for it. And, back then they didn't. So do I need to forgive him for not paying me for it? No. As to means if if him doing what he did brought up pain, trauma, turmoil, poverty in me, I had to forgive as to what came up in me. So I apply forgiveness to my poverty, and when I make that shift, then I send a different signal to all the world. And the world responds to the signals that we send out. So if I'm sending out a signal of, well, if I do spiritual work, I'm going to be in poverty, or I could never make it on my own, or you know, whatever the dynamic is, that's what you'll be forgiving. And the instant you forgive that, and energetically, and I'm talking about the high energy waves that literally, measurable high energy waves that literally leave the mind when you think a thought, through resonance, you'll attract a whole different result. And how long will it take? As long as it takes. I can, you know, very clearly see the time frame for me was about 7 years. I don't know how long it'll be for you. Hopefully, you know, we're here to support you, to offer you the principles. And, you know, back then I didn't have an understanding. I was just learning. And so hopefully with support, we can accelerate the process for you. We can assist you in clarity and having the tools and using the tools properly and effectively to change the internal dynamics that create the result. Now, this is a principle that applies everywhere. It doesn't matter. If you're in relationship hell, how long is it going to take you to remove, to forgive the generational pattern of belief that you're supposed to live in relationship hell? Look back at your generations. How many lived in relationship hell? Well, guess what? You're just repeating the pattern of the generation if that's where you're living. So now, do you forgive the person who you blame the hell on? No, you might pardon them, but you use forgiveness to go inside yourself and remove the belief that you deserve to live in relationship hell. And when you do, guess what? Your relationships turn to heaven. So it doesn't matter in which arena, you know, it's aliveness, it's health. Health is the same principle. If I hold energetic patterns of disease and death and suffering, then my physiology is heading for disease, death, and suffering. If I apply forgiveness as to disease, death, and suffering and begin to remove that from my structure, it doesn't matter if somebody's standing right at the precipice, right at the edge of the cliff of one more step, and it's a step into death. If one is engaged in patterns of hostility and fear and rage and blame and guilt and drama and trauma, they're walking, literally, physiologically walking toward the precipice of death, the cliff, which they step off and die. And at any instant that you choose to forgive as to those dynamics, then you can, even if you're right on the very edge of the cliff of death, you can step back a step, 2, 3, 4, 10, 100 miles away from the cliff and be restored to life. It all works by law. And law, interestingly, in the Aramaic language, you know, we live in a culture, again, Greek philosophy. We're told that law is the rule of a superior, and there's a big superior up there that's really peeved at you and actually has this lake of fire ready for you because you have sinned. Now, if you believe that crap, if you believe that BS, then you've got some serious work to do. And if you apply the tools of forgiveness to that which you've been brainwashed about and taught to blame somebody else, even if it's God that you're blaming, if you go inside yourself and remove those patterns, your life is recreated. So in Aramaic, the word law is not the rule of a superior, and the superior is peeved because you didn't do what they want you to do. That's a king's game. That's men's game. The word law in Aramaic simply describes how the energy system works. Here's how it works. You got an abundance of poverty in mind energy, you're going to have an abundance of poverty in your physical world. You got an abundance of poverty in mind energy, but you've got the genes that, you know, and you were handed millions of dollars in wealth, then guess what you're going to do? You're going to empty the bank account. You're going to lose the the wealth that was given to you and fulfill your destiny as a poverty-based person if that's what you hold in your structure, unless you apply forgiveness as to poverty in you. And as you remove that, life responds accordingly. That's the law. That's how the energy system works. And, you know, they said, well, what's the first law? What's most important in all this law you're teaching us in order to be a human being? He didn't say love your neighbor. He didn't say love God. In Aramaic, he said you must keep the gateway open in your mind. It's called Rahma. That keeps love present, that allows the true being that you are to enter your physiology and govern and rule your physiology with love, rather than the generational patterns of rage and guilt and blame and, you know, whoever. It's the kid's fault, it's the parents' fault, it's the spouse's fault, it's the grandparents' fault, it's the culture's fault, it's the president's fault, it's the. Once you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, and you go, God, I keep getting the same outcome. Is there a book about this? Well, yeah, there is, actually. You can go download it free from our website. It's called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? We've just been reading from it. You go to the website, you can download the book, or it's out of print right now, but you can go to Amazon or eBay. There are always lots of copies available on both Amazon and eBay to buy, paper copies. But you can download the book free in, I don't know, Dutch, German, Russian, Spanish, Swedish, Farsi. No, pardon me, Swedish. The Swedes wouldn't let us do that. Anyway, you can download the book and per level of understanding of what the forgiveness process is, how it works. If you're not using it, go to our website, whyagain.org. Upper left-hand corner of the home page, click the button that says Start Here. It'll walk you right through the whole process. Here is everything we've learned in the last half century about forgiveness. It's there, it's free, but it's work. You can actually do the worksheet process, the step-by-step, here's how you forgive. And when you first touch into it, it's going to shock you because it's totally backward to what the world would think would work. And the reason it's totally backward is because everybody's got it totally backward. Oh, it's all their fault. No, I'm the one who's been through it 87 different times with 42 different people. I'm the only one that was there every time. Oh, my God, this is about me. I need to go in and find those subtle parts of my own mind and remove them, those parts that are producing these results. Yeah, that's what you need to do. You can also go to your app store on your phone and type in the words Heartland. Heartland's all one word, Heartland, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. When you type that in, you will see the world's only forgiveness app created by Miss Jeannie, and it's awesome. Step-by-step forgiveness process right there on your phone. So put it to work and watch how dramatically things change. It's pretty awesome. So, Miss Jeannie, that was a great question, and hopefully we'll have answered it in a manner that gives this young lady the start on having the brain cells for what to do and apply the process of forgiveness.
Yeah, and so, during your conversation and talking about when you were talking about, you know, that we were being and at an early age we forgot that or whatever, it came to my mind what the gentleman, our friend that you were talking to yesterday when we were on our way back from Knoxville, what he shared with you that his daughter told them when she was 3. Share that.
Yeah, that was awesome. It's a gentleman that lives here locally. We hadn't seen him in some time since we moved here to Virginia. And so I called him just out of the blue to say hello. He's got a daughter that's 6. He's homeschooling her. And he shared that when she was about 3, she sat he and his wife down and said, I just remember when I met you in heaven, you, Mommy and Daddy. And this is a child of 3. And we gave each other a piece of our hearts. And then I was born here with you. Whew. Remembering who we are and what it's all about. Out of the mouths of babes, there it is. We gave each other a piece of our hearts. And you know, it's interesting when we get brainwashed into this world of bodies, we think that what makes people happy is getting more bodies, or, you know, playing with other people's body parts, and, you know, all this stuff that goes along with that insanity, aberrant sexuality. When we get to recognizing who we are as human beings, and we start to understand the power and the gift of a true, integritous, connected, committed relationship, and the gifts that it gives that aren't available in any other way. Satiation isn't satisfaction. Our world, when separated from being, teaches us that all you need is more of this satiation. More money, more possessions, more things, more stuff, more bodies, more sex. And people rationalize and create all kinds of stories about how that's a good thing, that that's where they are. Excuse me, all that stuff that's been made up is all a fallacy. And it's that space of true connected commitment that brings the greatest gifts that relationship can bring. So, just powerfully pegged by this child of 3, we gave each other a piece of our hearts. I thank you for bringing that up, Jean. That was perfect to recall at this point.
Yeah, so we
it
are
looks like
down
we've
to
got
12
about
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody press 1. Don't wait until we've only got 2 minutes to go.
So if you're out there in listener land, I can't imagine that with the conversation we've had so far that there are not dozens of comments in each person's head or questions. And so here's the space to refine and get support with your questions.
And I just want to say thank you I got texts from several people that listened to the show yesterday. It was some segments out of one of my Women Healing Women intensives. And so appreciate you listening to that. There had been several questions the last few days about the women's intensives. So that can kind of give you an insight as to some of the things that are covered. And we had a really good time. I mean, Michael heard me editing the show, and he wanted to know who I was out here partying with.
What are you guys doing in there? I was in the other room, and I could just hear the laughter and the howling. So if you didn't listen to yesterday's show, give it a listen. It's a live segment out of one of Jeannie's Women Healing Women intensives. So, yeah, that was a powerful time.
Yeah.
And that last one was over in Oak Island.
Yes.
And the conversation now is, seeing as how COVID is kind of interfered with so many things in life, lots of things collapsing and disappearing. And as things collapse and disappear, people can focus on what's collapsing and disappearing and suffer. Or, on the other side of it, there's an opportunity being born. When the horse and buggy disappeared because the gasoline, actually it wasn't gasoline, it was originally designed to run on vegetable oils. Diesel came out until they start to pull gasoline out of or diesel out of the earth. And you know, a lot of people's lives went by the wayside. Those who couldn't adapt withered. You know, the horse and buggy, you know, the guy who shoot horses and blah blah blah. They couldn't adapt and see what was going on. It was loss and death and failure. And those who could open their eyes could say, "Oh," and this is opportunity. Interesting, in the Chinese language, the same character that represents danger also represents opportunity. So what mind energy do you approach it with? And so, if you're out there, give us a shout. Put your hand up. Let's have a conversation. How can we support you? You know, if I'd had this conversation, what we've talked about so far today's show, in your hometown, in your local library, your local, you know, university or prison or church, as I finish this presentation and walk down off the stage, you know, you're in the audience. You're going to walk over to me. You're going to say, "Michael, I just have a quick question."
hand up.
Then let's have that quick question.
We have a hand up. 808, you're on the air. I believe this is Roma.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a great show today.
Welcome, lady. How are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm just totally blown away, Michael, at your story about the $100 bill and how that was the breakthrough, because I've been aware for years that the energy field that you are immersed in as far as prosperity is concerned is like I've never seen another human being carrying that frequency of energy. So it was so beautiful to actually hear your story. and the thing that
I'll
struck
tell you,
me
up to that point, it was quite a trauma.
Yeah.
Quite a challenge.
Yeah,
Two little kids.
Did you say 7 years? You were just keep
About
on.
7
you just
years.
Kept on keeping
from
on.
the time I started doing this work. Yep.
But the thing, of course, that stands out to me is the divine guidance that you received, and that you had the guts and the courage to just step forward and follow. Yeah.
I can remember in my head going, you know, "You want me to do what? I'm going to give away this $100 that's in my pocket?"
The last bit of substance. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. That is just such a great story. Wow. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, what was interesting was I was sitting I'm in the living room now because the phone works better here, but I have a speakerphone in the bedroom, so I usually listen to the show from there. But the sound had gone out during Dr. Tim's time, so eventually I just turned it off because he didn't come back in. And the cat, I was sitting over there near the phone still because I was reading something, and my cat came up and she began like really fussing around the phone, you know. And it was like, "Oh, all right, I'll turn it back on." And this was after your portion of the show had started, right before you began, right before Jeannie shared about the question that someone had having to do with that triggered your prosperity story. So, I mean, I have my cat to thank for this.
They know where the energy is. The animals are always on it.
I know. I mean, it's just, well, there are so many, you know, things that are beyond words.
That last still point session that we did, and so many people's cats just, you know, as the energy started to move, just went, you know, stepped right in, got on top of them, and I mean, that was just great. The animals love it. When I was in South Florida, I actually had a house in Delray Beach, and I lived just, well, maybe 300 or 400 yards off of the ocean, and that area of the beach in the winter was virtually empty, you know, was abandoned. And on warm days, I would do my work with people on the beach.
Ooh,
I do the mind shifters and still point breathing work, and then we'd go out into the ocean and I'd breathe them. I'd actually, the water was shallow. I'd stand with, you've done the energy field work, and you put your hands underneath the base of the skull, and I would literally just put my hands under the base of the skull, have them float, and start to breathe, and then I just kind of move them like they were a fish. I'm just dragging them gently through the water, just a slight pressure on their head. And they do the still point breathing process. And then when they'd hit the still point, the animals would start to come. I remember one day I've got somebody and they're in still point, and we're in pretty shallow water. I mean, I'm up to maybe my waist or so, and working with this person, and about a 6-foot manta ray just came right up to the surface, like right beside them. I could have, if I'd let go of their head, I put my hand out and touched this manta ray. The animals would come up. I remember once a whole flock of pelicans just right at that moment just came overhead and boom, came down and just dive bombed us right over our heads. So the animals know where the energy is for sure.
Yeah. Oh boy. Huh. Well, I'm kind of in a space beyond words, so I don't
go for it
much anymore. I laugh a lot.
That's awesome.
I laugh a lot.
Good for you. Nice. Well, we join you in the laughter and the joy. Yes, it's definitely a gift. It's Teilhard de Chardin. If you've never heard of him, you can Google him. He was a paleontologist and also a Catholic priest, and he has a definition of joy that I always adjust just by one word. And his definition was that joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God.
Right.
And of course, if that were true, everybody be in joy all the time. Just one little word, and that is that joy is the infallible sign of the awareness of the presence of that love in which we live, move, and have our being. Yeah, allowing ourselves to experience that instead of the trauma of the past generations, carbon-based memory.
Yeah, of the presence in this moment. It's just always here. And, we were taught to completely ignore it.
Yep. There's a reason they call it the present. There's a gift. It's always there. It's always there.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Always available unless the mind has other plans. And
well, thank you for giving the gift of always being here for all of us in these phone calls. I mean, it is such a sweet morning routine. For me, it's a morning routine living here in Hawaii. It starts at 6 and goes till 8.
Right, there you go. Perfect.
So it wasn't even light when Dr. Tim's show started this morning, but yeah, and so I have to turn the volume down so I don't wake my neighbors up and sit close, kind of huddle around the phone. But I always enjoy it. It's such a gift that I'm so grateful. I am so grateful.
Thank you for saying
I ran into this work 39 or 40 years ago, and it's been the biggest, it's just been the biggest gift of my life. So it's beyond.
Thanks for receiving it. Couldn't give it if you wouldn't receive it. So let's just keep passing it on.
Yeah, okay.
All right, young lady. Well, you have a blessed one. We're down to the last minute and a half or so.
Okay, all right. Blessings.
Okay,
I tried to tune in to the show yesterday, but I couldn't hear it. It didn't. Maybe my telephone. I just couldn't hear it well enough to comfortably listen because I could hear echoes in the room or something. Anyway. Yeah, thank you for making that available for all of us, Jeannie. Thank you. Aloha to everyone. Okay.
Aloha. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And check your email. If you're on our email list, Jeannie sent out a newsletter yesterday. We're starting a Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing membership club where you can join. And we've out of the last Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing workshop that we did, we chose to create a monthly. So the second Saturday of every month, we're going to be doing a Still Point Breathing process. And so check the newsletter out. If you don't have it, you can go to our website, and down at the bottom there's a link that says sign up for the newsletter, and tune you in if you want to join us for that. In the meantime, have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world.